We just got that request.
Okay. Okay, so if we can just call our city selection committee of September 9 to order. And Miss, if we could have the roll call, please.
Okay, Gibbons.
Here.
Gibbons present. Moore.
Here.
Moore present. Blankley. Blankley. Blankley is absent. Fliger.
Here.
Fliger present. Mock. Mock. Mock is absent. Syok.
It's actually, I'm present, but again, Councilmember Rennie's our voting member for Los Gatos.
Okay.
I'm present.
Okay, great. Rennie present. Montano. Montano absent. Turner.
Here.
Turner present. Constantine.
Present.
Constantine present. Kame.
Here.
Kame present. Dubois.
Here.
Dubois present. Jones.
Present.
Jones present. Jane.
Here.
Jane present. Zhao.
Present.
Zhao present. And Klein.
Present.
And Klein is present. We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. And so before we begin, if we can look at our consent agenda, which is approval of minutes from January 2021. No? Is
Move to
there
approve.
anyone? Okay, so if I could real quick, let's see if there's any public comment on the consent. And it looks like Carmen, the council member of Montano's hand is raised, but if we could move her over as a panelist. And I believe that is the only hand raised. So
I'm also trying to get Marie in as well.
Okay. So I'm going to close public testimony and I turn to the council if there's any questions or comments to the consent agenda. If not, a motion. No?
So I just want to say I'm here. This is Montano.
Welcome.
Thank
So
you.
is Blankley.
Oh, good. I was just trying to get you in, Marie.
I know, it's just, I honestly, there's just too many emails from the same source that I have trouble with this one.
But
So,
there's
for
there's a
Carmen and
motion
Marie,
already.
we're at consent agenda, which are the minutes. And so I see no hands raised. If I could find a motion for approval.
Actually, there was already a motion, so I'll second.
Oh, okay. I didn't see her. That. Sorry, I apologize. So a second from Jones and then
Constantine made the motion.
if you wouldn't mind calling the question.
Okay, Turner. Turner.
Yes, yes.
Turner, aye. Fliger.
Yes.
Fliger, aye. Jones.
Aye.
Jones, aye. Constantine.
Aye.
Constantine, aye. Rennie.
Aye.
Rennie, aye. Moore.
Abstain.
Moore, abstain. Gibbons.
Aye.
Gibbons, aye. Blankley.
Aye.
Blankley, aye. Montano.
Aye.
Montano, aye. Zhao.
Aye.
Zhao, aye. Kame.
Yes.
Kame, aye. Dubois.
Yes.
Dubois, aye. Jane.
Abstain.
Jane, aye. Klein.
Abstain. Abstain.
Klein, abstain.
That's right. No, Klein is aye and Jane is abstain.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and with 12 ayes and 2 abstentions, the motion carries.
Okay, thank you. And so today we have 2 appointments. The first is Sourcewise, which is an appointment of 1 representative. There's a vacant seat. In your packet are the descriptions that have been provided. And I am going to ask Andy if there are any additional comments to any of the 2 recruitments that we are filling today. And Andy, you're on mute.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You would think I would have known by now. We have one for SourceWise. We have applicant for the EAOC for West Valley and South Cities, and one for EAOC. So, Madam Chair, you could ask if there are any nominations from the floor as you proceed with them as well.
Okay, so if we could just begin with SourceWise first. Applications received, there are 3. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Just one.
There's one from SourceWise, and I want to see if there's any applications from the floor before we open it up for people to speak. And Mayor Gibbons, I'm sorry, did I see your hand raised? No.
I'll wait.
Okay. So seeing no nominations at this time, do we know, is Gail Osmer available?
I don't believe so, but Vice Mayor Jones may wish to speak on her behalf because the application came from his district.
And I'll go ahead and make the nomination for Gail Osmer.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Okay, so do you want to turn that into a motion, Vice Mayor?
Yes, I'd like to make the motion to appoint Gail Osmer to that position.
Second, Constantine.
Okay, and Audit, if we could call the question.
Okay, Rennie,
Aye.
Rennie, I, Blankley,
This is the SourceWise, right?
Yes.
That's correct.
Yes.
Aye.
Blankley, I, Kame,
Yes.
Kame, I, Montano,
Aye.
Montano, I, Jones,
Aye.
Jones, I, Jane,
Aye.
Jane, I, Flagger,
Yes.
Flagger, I, Montano,
Aye.
Montano, I, Turner,
Yes.
Turner, I, Klein,
Aye.
Klein, I, Dubois,
Yes.
Dubois, I, Constantine,
Aye.
Constantine, I, Gibbons,
Aye.
Gibbons, I, and Zhao.
Aye.
Zhao, I. And with 14 ayes, the motion carries.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, I had a registered vote for
Can hear you.
Councilmember Moore, you just muted yourself.
oh, okay, I'm sorry. So my vote was registered Montano for me, and if I may, the answer is aye.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, I was wondering why my name got repeated twice.
My apologies. Thank
Okay.
you for the correction.
Okay, thank you. And so now we turn to EAOC, West Valley and South Cities. We have one application contained in our packet, and we will ask Mr. Hudis, Councilmember Hudis, to speak. But before we do, any other nominations on the floor? Mayor Gibbons.
So I'm probably interrupting your sequence, but I wanted to comment that this is an important role to have an alternate, and there are no alternates. My alternate expires. I'm happy to continue in that capacity, but I'm open if someone else wishes to have that, then I'm happy to step aside. But I think you need an alternate for that role. Councilmember Rennie would like to assume the alternate role, that would be wonderful.
Okay, and Vice Mayor Rennie, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I've been in that role as the primary for probably 4 or more years and an alternate before that. I did not apply because Councilmember Hudis said he would like to do it and I wanted to give him an opportunity. I would be happy to continue as an alternate since I know it well. I can step in at any time if needed. So I'm happy to be alternate also. I really just stepped back to give Councilmember Hudis an opportunity.
Okay, thank you. And Andy, do we need to, given that there's opportunities for alternate, do we have to, can we just choose between the two?
If I may, Madam
Yes.
Chair, I'm happy to withdraw.
Oh, okay. So Vice Mayor Reddy, does that mean that you will take that?
Yes.
Okay, and so are there any other nominations? Okay, seeing none, if we can ask Councilmember Hudis to join us. And Councilmember Hudis, this is an opportunity to introduce yourself and for your colleagues to ask any questions that they may have of you.
I'm trying to move him.
Okay.
You're muted.
Thank you, members of the City Selection Committee. I am very pleased to apply for this position. I am a relatively new council member, but I am an old emergency communications and emergency response person going back to the Loma Prieta earthquake when we had no power and I put an antenna up on the roof. As I've stated in my application, I'm serving in a number of capacities that I'm very active in CERT and in leadership of our emergency Aries Races group here, and as well involved in current drills and events through the county and others. So I would be delighted to try to work on this as well, and I appreciate the opportunity, and I certainly understand the importance of it.
Thank you, Councilmember. And so any questions for Councilmember Hudis? Seeing none, I will see if there's any comments or ultimately a motion.
I move Councilmember Hudis to be the representative.
Thank you, Mayor Gibbons.
Jane will second.
Second.
And we have a second from Mayor Fleiker. And Auden, if you wouldn't mind calling the question.
May.
Okay.
Yes.
Hold on, can I ask a question? Would you like to combine this motion with the
That's what I was
alternate?
thinking. Yeah.
Can you combine would the maker of the motion be willing to combine this with the alternate position as well?
Yes, I am amenable to that.
Great.
Second.
And so we have Hudis for the position for the seat and the alternate running. Okay, take it away, Auden.
Okay. So Kame.
Yes.
Kame. I. Jones.
Aye.
Jones. I. Rennie.
Aye.
Rennie. I. Gibbons.
Aye.
Gibbons. I. Flagger.
Yes.
Flagger. I. Moore.
Aye.
Moore. I. Constantine.
Aye.
Constantine. I. Dubois.
Yes.
Dubois. I. Klein.
Yes.
Klein. I. Zhao.
Aye.
Zhao. I. Montano.
Aye.
Montano. I. Blankley.
Aye.
Blankley. I. Turner.
Yes.
Turner. I. And Jane.
Yes.
Jane. I. And with 14 ayes, the motion carries.
You're muted, Marika.
It's catching tonight.
So we have the same position is available, but this time for, I think it's officially called Central County Cities. We have the one vacant seat as Councilmember Melton is terming out. And so we have an application from Mayor Klein. And if there are any other motions or nominations from the floor. Okay, seeing none, Mayor Klein, if you know your colleagues here, but if you'd like to say anything or if anyone would like to ask any questions of you.
I'll just be very short. You know, I've been very active in our Sunnyvale CERT team for multiple years now. Even, prior to being on council and while on council, I still go back and help with training and especially their final exercises and all that. And so, and have activated our CERT team for reviewing, as well as just within COVID, activated them quite a bit. So I've been, emergency preparedness is very important with being on the flight path of Moffett Field and other things. So I totally understand the need and the importance of this position, and I hope I have your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Mayor Klein.
Okay, and before I do, if I could just see if there's anyone from our attendees that would like to raise their hand or make a comment. I see none, and so we have a motion from Vice Mayor Jones. Thank you, Chappie.
Second from Constantine.
Madam Chair, do you want to see if there is any, if I could just pause you for a second, is there any nominations for alternate so that you might do them together?
Great idea. Thank you for that. Any nominations for alternate?
And that would need to be Santa Clara or Milpitas, just as a reminder.
Yes, and Sunnyvale.
And Sunnyvale.
In the past, we would nominate people who weren't here, but I see no nominations.
I'll go ahead. I'll go ahead and volunteer.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Vice Mayor. And so if Vice Mayor Jones, could you amend your motion to include Carmen?
I will amend my motion to include Carmen.
Thank you. And our seconder?
Yes.
Thank you. And Auden, we're ready.
Okay, Gibbons.
Yes.
Gibbons, aye. Jones.
Aye.
Jones, aye. Dubois.
Yes.
Dubois, aye. Montano.
Aye.
Montano, aye. Rennie.
Aye.
Rennie, aye. Constantine.
Aye.
Constantine, aye. Zhao.
Aye.
Zhao, aye. Langley.
Aye.
Langley, aye. Moore.
Aye.
Moore, aye. Turner.
Yes.
Turner, aye. Jane.
Yes.
Jane, aye. Klein.
Aye.
Klein, aye. Flagger.
Yes.
Flagger, aye. And Kame.
Yes.
Kame, aye. With 14 ayes, the motion carries.
Okay, thank you. So that concludes the agenda items. I turn to public comment. If anyone in our attendees would like to comment. I see no hands raised, and so I will close public comment and adjourn city selection so that we have an opportunity to begin cities association. Thank you all, and good to see everyone. And congratulations to our selections.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hold on one second here. Auden, can we need a link for Steve Preminger? If that's possible. Sorry. So you can go ahead then.
So Gary.
Gary made it on.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay, so welcome back, everyone. Now we begin our Cities Association Board of Directors meeting. It is 7:05 and we are calling to order. And if we could begin roll call for this meeting.
Sorry, Auden and I are doing a couple things at the same time. We'll be with you shortly.
Okay.
Okay, I can call roll.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so Montano.
Here.
Montano present. Sayok.
Here.
Sayok present. Mock. Mock absent. Flagger.
Here.
Flagger absent. Blankley.
I'm here, Auden.
Oh, I mean Flagger present. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Flagger is present. Thank you. Blankley.
Here.
Blankley is present. Moore.
Here.
Moore present. Bivey.
Present.
Ivy, present. Klein,
Present.
Klein, present. Zhao,
Present.
Zhao, present. Watanabe, Watanabe, Santa Clara, absent. Jones.
No, I'm here. Did you not hear me?
Oh, we didn't, but I heard you now.
Oh.
Watanabe, present.
Okay.
Jones,
Present.
Jones, present. Dubois,
Here.
Dubois, present. Abakoga, Abakoga,
Here. Sorry.
okay, Abakoga, present. Constantine,
Present.
Constantine, present. And Turner. Turner.
Actually, I don't think she's here. I don't see her on the screen.
Okay. I will note when she comes back in then.
Okay.
So with 13 presents, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Auden. Welcome, everyone. We have 3 items on our consent agenda. Would anyone like to pull any of the 3 items? I see no hands raised. I'll look to our public real quick to see if there's any public comment to the 3 items. Seeing none, I turn back to my colleagues. Would anyone like to make a motion for approval?
So moved. Jones.
Second, Abekoga.
Thank you.
Okay, Constantine.
Aye.
Constantine, I. Watanabe.
Yes.
Watanabe, I. Blankley.
Yes.
Blankley, I. Bybee.
Aye.
Bybee, I. Moore.
Aye.
Moore, I. Sayok.
Yes.
Sayok, I. Abakoga.
Aye.
Abakoga, I. Flagger.
Yes.
Flagger, I. Klein.
Aye.
Klein, I. Dubois.
Yes.
Dubois, I. Montano.
Aye.
Montano, I. Jones.
Aye.
Jones, I. Zhao.
Aye.
Zhao, I. And did either Turner or Mock join us? No? Okay, then with 13 ayes, our motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you. Today we have 2 subjects on our agenda. The first is a presentation on our representatives who for the Associated Board of Bay Area Governments, ABAG. And so we have asked Mayor Flagger and Gibbons to both provide an update and a presentation on what has been happening. We're all aware of the various pieces connected to housing in the region. And so it's an opportunity to hear the work that they've been doing and how that affects us as an association and ultimately all of us as individual cities. And so Mayor Flagger, if I could defer the chair to both you and Mayor Gibbons.
Thank you, Mayor Sayok, and it's great to see everybody. Mayor Gibbons and I thought it would be helpful and timely to give you an update on all the different things that we've been working on your behalf as your ABAG representatives. So I will do a quick update on the RENA process, and then Mayor Gibbons will give an update on Pan Bay Area 2050, and also touch on the Cities Association strategy related to or service on the different regional boards, specifically ABAG and MTC, because as we've seen, and those who have been serving much longer than I have, it really helps to have the right people in the right places when we're discussing housing, transportation, and many of these issues that affect us locally. So I will start off with the RENA process. I remember when we did the first presentation maybe 18 months ago, we had so many questions, and I can't believe we're almost to the end of the RENA process. It kept going, COVID, everything, it didn't stop, it just kept going. And so where we are right now is we're going through the appeal process. and ABAG has received 28 appeals. And so as you all know, there are 101 cities that make up ABAG and 9 counties. And so of all those jurisdictions, only 28 submitted appeals. And I say only because 28 out of 110 doesn't sound like a lot, but it's actually a big number of appeals for a region. And in Santa Clara County alone, we had 6 jurisdictions that submitted appeals, and each jurisdiction should by now have received their scheduled public hearing. And as your ABAG representative, if you've not heard from ABAG, please let me know. I can follow up and get your public hearing date. I should share with the group that I'm actually on the RENA appeal board, so I will be hearing the different appeals along with other city representatives. My city, Los Altos, has submitted a RENA appeal, and I will recuse myself from that public hearing. What else can I share about the RENA process? We have 6 hearings scheduled over the next 2 months, and if we need to schedule additional hearings, we will do that. And each hearing date, will go from 5 to 8 hours, depending on how many appeals we have for that day. So the next several weeks will be very busy, but if you have any questions related to the RENA appeal process, please let me know. In addition to wearing my RENA appeal hearing hat, I'm still your representative, and I'm happy to get you answers or resources if that's necessary. So that's it for RENA. I don't know if you have any questions. I'm happy to go to Mayor Gibbons, and then maybe at the end, we can see if you have questions.
All right, so those of you that haven't been on Cities Association may not have heard my ad nauseum speech, which is please be engaged with ABAG and MTC. Your reps are really an important part of representing the Cities Association in all our counties. And so with that, related to the RENA numbers, I know a lot of cities have submitted those appeals, and a lot of other letters have gone to ABAG and MTC and probably to legislators. It would be appropriate for Cities Association and your representatives to have a copy of all of that. So when we go into meetings, we aren't blindsided and seem unknowledgeable of the groups that we're representing. So that would be a marvelous help if you'd be so kind to do that. Okay, the next thing is the future of the 2050 process. And it is almost finished. The final Plan Bay Area 2050 document, the final impact report, and the final implementation plan are all on track to be released the week of October 4th. Early October meetings of the Regional Advisory Working Group, the ABAG Regional Planning Committee, and the MTC Policy Advisory Council will include presentations on the revisions to the draft plan. I am not aware of any substantive revisions. I will let you know if that's the case, but I am not aware of any. On Thursday, October 21st at 5 p.m., at a special joint meeting of the MTC and ABAG Executive Board, the 2 boards will consider Plan Bay Area 2050 for its final adoption. If adopted, it will become the Bay Area's official long-range plan for transportation, housing, economic development, and environmental resilience for the next 4 years. And notice it says 4 years because plans 2040, 2050, each of the cycles gets reviewed every 4 years. So that happens really quick, so don't miss out on that. All right, I just wanted to also mention that the viability of ABAG in particular has been decreasing over the last few years, probably the last 8 years now. Many of you may know that, and it's being consolidated with MTC. Most of the committees have been consolidated. And we're very fortunate that Mayor Flygore is part of some of the new committees related to housing and so forth. And what my point in bringing this up is my appointment is until, I believe, June of 2022. I would like to offer that I am willing to step down after October. I'd like to finish through the October meeting. and make room. It is really, we've talked about this before, but it is really, really important for the cities association to have a strong strategy on how to become a significant player in ABAG as it moves forward and in MTC. And we really haven't had that long-term continuity and representation, and participation in these subcommittees and these special committees is extremely important. So I would encourage all of you to think about, particularly those who have at least 2, maybe 3 years on their term left, to start going in on a cycle, and also ask that people look at reappointments so people can stay in positions over a period of time to become chair of MTC, to become chair of BACMED, to become chair of all of the groups that we have significant political appointments to. And I just offer that BAFA, the Bay Area Housing Finance Authority, is something you're all going to be wanting to pay attention to. There was state legislation telling us in the Bay Area how we can finance our housing. Power of HCD has substantively increased, and there's legislation that may make it even more so. So please feel free to keep the ABAG and MTC reps in your correspondence and in your future planning for yourselves and your council members as City Association strategizes on how to move forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor Gibbons. And the only thing I will add is if you do not receive the ABAG e-news, which is their newsletter, please let us know. They do put very important information in the newsletter, but a lot of these also have deadlines. And so if you don't receive it, let us know. If you do, one thing I know I've done in the past is to maybe have someone else receive the newsletter that will actually read it. So maybe someone in staff could also be copied on the email, have that person sign up so they can also go through maybe someone in your planning department. But the ABAG e-news has some really helpful information for jurisdictions.
Thank you both. And thank you for serving and representing our association as well as the cities here in Santa Clara County. Vice Mayor Montano.
Thank you. So Nesa, yeah, I've never seen that newsletter. Does it go to our city staff or to our city manager? I'm not sure what, how do we get a hold of that newsletter so we can be updated what's going on?
Go ahead, Executive Director.
Hi, I did contact ABAG because I was worried about always forwarding things. And ABAG says that all council members are supposed to, your emails are entered. So it's probably going to your junk folder or another folder that's being triaged. So I didn't want to also forward, because if it has that email address in it, then my emails would start going into your junk forward as well. But you are supposed to be getting them, so you might want to do a little search on your email.
Okay.
And it's ABAG e-news, Carmen. I'll forward one to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else that wants one?
And there's also another e-news, which is MTC-ABAG updates. That's also a very good one to get because it's very brief. It's usually 2 pages at most.
I would take a forward on those too, if you don't mind, Marie Blankley, because I haven't seen them and they may very well be going into a junk folder. I don't know.
I haven't seen that at all.
But
thanks for that.
If you would, I will forward, Mayor Gibbons forward one to me recently, and I will forward that to all of you to make sure that and then you can also search for it as well.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
There is a member of the public.
Okay, let's open public comment. And so, Councilmember Hendricks.
Yeah, hello. This is Vice Mayor Hendricks from Sunnyvale. I'm one of the alternates to ABAG, and I just want to pile on to Mayor Gibbons' comments about being able to be strategic on who we're selecting. I was picked as the alternate just because there was nobody else last year. And I would actually encourage Mayor Gibbons to stay for another year. And I'd be willing to step down because I only have one more year left. I'm not going to be able to be the follow-on person. And if you had somebody else who was your strategic person, let them take one of the alternate spots and they could watch what Nisa and Liz are doing and the good work they're doing in there and learn something along the way before they transitioned over. So I'd be happy to go ahead and step aside. I wasn't going to raise my hand for next year at all. I'd be willing to step aside sooner because I think Liz is absolutely right on being able to take a strategic view. And it shouldn't just be somebody who wants to do, oh, I think that'd be cool and fun, but somebody that's actually, as a group, you're able to look at and go, here, this is a person who's going to be able to actually represent our strategy of what we're trying to accomplish and let them get some learning time in before they're going to be thrown into the fire, instead of just, oh, I finally went to a meeting because I finally got assigned to the product. So I just want to really thank Liz for her comments about this. And I know she's been talking about the strategic thinking and how we do the placement of people for a long time. And she is absolutely 100% correct.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Any other public comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public testimony. I guess encourage all of us, if we have particularly new colleagues on our councils, especially on their first term, that you think be of interest. Perhaps if it's okay with Mayor Gibbons and Mayor Flagger, we connect them with you so that they have a better understanding. It's a lot of work that I know that both of you two put into it, and so I'm sure that others may have questions on time commitments. In the past, how often you needed to drive to the Bay, to Oakland and San Francisco. And so those types of questions. But any other questions? Oh, yes, Mayor Gibbons.
I was just saying, yes, absolutely fine.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for our representatives? Okay, thank you very much. And what we'll do for the remainder of the calendar year is we'll be asking all of our representatives that have been selected through select committee to we'll be inviting them to also provide updates similar to what Mayor Flagger and Mayor Gibbons have been doing. And so we'll agendize those as we continue. Okay, thank you both. And so we now move to our third item for tonight. And that is the Santa Clara Santa Cruz Roundtable. And the first will be a report from our Vice Mayor Jones on the special meeting of September 7, 2021. At our last executive board meeting, we had a lengthy conversation of our financing, and there were several motions that were passed. The first was specific to bills that were going to be forwarded on. And so Vice Mayor Jones, I defer to both you and to Mayor Klein now.
Thank you, Mariko. I'm going to share my screen.
You should be able to share now, Chappie.
Okay. So first of all, I want to thank the members of the ad hoc committee, Mayor Klein, Mary Lynn Bernald, Glenn Hendricks, and Kathy Wabanabe. We put in some pretty extensive work on this effort, and the information is in detail on the report that we submitted. So I know most of you are A students, so you've already read it and read all the details, but for those of you who have not gotten around to it, it's a good read. Get your snuggly on, and it's a nice bottle or glass of Chardonnay or Cabernet and read it in detail. I'm just going to do an overview of how we got to where we are. So I'm going to start out with our recommendation that's in the report. I'm going to go over the executive board direction from September 3rd. And then I'm also going to talk about the roundtable direction and vote that happened on Tuesday, and then potential actions that we can pursue. So the recommendation in our report was for the Cities Association to continue to supporting the roundtable as the fiscal sponsor. And there's an important caveat to that recommendation, and that is, should the roundtable approve payments of expenses incurred on their behalf at their September 7th, 2021 special meeting. I also want to note that I'm going to start out by addressing that first recommendation. And depending on how the conversation goes in the direction we go in, we can go into our recommendation B and C. So the executive board gave specific direction that there's an expectation that all outstanding costs and invoices would be paid by the roundtable, and that we were not to pursue any further action, including, formalizing an MOU, unless those invoices are paid in full. There was also direction that if the roundtable failed to pay, the fiscal sponsorship would terminate on December 31st, and staff would be directed to take appropriate steps to implement that termination. It was also recommended that the roundtable should enter into an agreement between the Cities Association and the roundtable to formalize any reimbursements that would be needed for additional actions taken on behalf of the roundtable. So the roundtable had their meeting on September 7th, and based on the letter that we received from Kirsten Powell, and also from observations from that meeting, the roundtable made the decision to approve several budget items, but not approve the outstanding invoices from the Cities Association to the roundtable for roundtable related work. There was also a motion that was approved to limit the amount of work associated with the roundtable on behalf of the Cities Association to a bare minimum, to just make sure that any kind of approvals or bills or technical work was done, but nothing more than that. So the ad hoc committee assisted the roundtable and the roundtable chair in formalizing and creating a draft budget. The intent of that was just to facilitate the budget process and do whatever we could to assist the chair in terms of having at least a draft budget that she could take to the roundtable, and they could modify, adjust, and make any changes they wanted, but we at least wanted to have a framework. The roundtable reviewed that budget, and they approved several budget items. One was to ESA for $136,257, legal services for $25,000. But they concluded that they needed more detail to approve the special assessment or outstanding bills from the Cities Association related to roundtable work. So they weren't, they didn't authorize or approve those invoices because of, again, the desire to have additional detail associated with that. So potential actions. We can continue to follow the executive board's direction and withdraw our fiscal sponsorship and work out a process and a timeline with an end date of December 31st. Or another potential action or option is to provide the roundtable some additional detail regarding the budget items that they have questions about. And if not approved by the next Cities Association meeting on November 11th, then we can withdraw our fiscal sponsorship by December 31st. So those are the two potential actions that I'm presenting. And now I'm going to open it up for discussion and dialogue.
Thank you, Mayor Jones. And Mayor Klein, would you like to add anything as our second ad hoc committee member?
Sure. I'll just add a little bit. I think Chappie basically covered all the major items. One of the things that, when we started this effort was to talk to the roundtable about other fiscal agents, and that was part of your packet. I think it's appendix, the principles document, and it's appendix A or B list, and it was mentioned here in the slides. as far as other alternatives. And so after the ad hoc, or after the airplane roundtable looked at other alternatives from fiscal agents and found none of them reasonable, that was one of the reasons, Chappie and I and the rest of the ad hoc committee looked at what the issues were and trying to move forward with our organization to continue being that fiscal agent. And so in good faith, trying to bridge that gap and figuring out the best way to proceed. So that's all I have. Thank you.
And so, council members, any questions of either Mayor Klein or Vice Mayor Jones? Okay, yes, so Councilmember Abikoga.
Thank you. And I have to admit, I didn't see the report till late this afternoon, so I haven't had a chance to fully look through everything. But my question has to do with the alternatives. And I know there was a list of what they were in the conclusion, but I was hoping to get more information, like if you could share more as to why these alternatives. I think we talked about joint venture, but why some of the other alternatives or the rest of the alternatives were deemed unreasonable. Thanks.
Right. So great question, Margaret. So we didn't do any independent validation on the issues around an alternative fiscal sponsor. I will direct that question. Actually, I know Mary Lynn and Glenn are here, so they can probably address that question directly and do a better job than I can.
Any other questions specific to Vice Mayor Jones and Mayor Klein? Okay, so if we can open our public testimony, and we have several members in attendance today. And so for those that would be interested in speaking, if you could just raise your hand, and we'll bring each out, and if you could bring each participant over one at a time. Councilmember Bernald.
Good evening. Thank you for the presentation, Larry and Chappie, and thank you for the work that you put into the ad hoc. I would, as I've put in chat, like to indicate that we termed these as unfeasible, not infeasible, not unreasonable. And at the time, you've had discussion about joint venture Silicon Valley. I think we actually would have benefited in our discussion on Tuesday had we had some member of Cassie there to help answer questions. I think had we had the 3 bullet points that you've offered tonight, it would have helped in our discussion. But what I need to point out is the reasons that we voted the way we did is contained in the letter that Kirsten Powell sent today to Cities Association. And I would recommend that before you make any decisions, you read that letter, because it best encapsulates what the reasoning was behind the votes that we had. We did not completely turn down the budget. In fact, we voted to move forward. But based on our bylaws, which say that we need specific details, we were not able to come to a conclusion for the amounts. And additionally, this was a presentation to our board explaining that this is a 60-day review period. So we respectfully ask that we have the information come back from cities. And if need be, then we could have this taken to our individual member entities, the 8 cities and the county. So I'm happy to answer any questions as this presentation goes on. And I'm sure that Glenn Hendricks would like to speak to anything that I've missed out on too. But I want to stress the fact that we were working to continue under a situation that did not give us enough information, despite the number of times that I asked for information. despite the times that I had asked to have somebody there to answer the questions so that we could move forward in a better informed situation. So with that, I will give over my 34 seconds and let the rest of you consider what should be considered. And again, please look at that letter that our attorney sent today.
Councilmember, any questions for Councilmember Bernald? I see.
I have
Yep. Councilmember, Vice Mayor Montano.
Thank you. So basically, the roundtable board is questioning the invoices. Is that correct? The charges?
Yes, we needed more detail. I can actually move towards our MOU and our bylaws. Our bylaws, Article 5 in staff support says duties of the roundtable staff and consultant provided by the Cities Association of Santa Clara County shall be specified and approved as a part of the roundtable's annual budget process. We did not have the duties and consultants details as to, and so therefore their job descriptions, so that we couldn't understand how the invoices directly related to the roundtable, period. I hope that's answering your question.
Yeah, it's just you want to know that you want to validate these charges. That's the bottom line in a nutshell. Thank you.
Exactly, and we definitely understand the nature of attorney-client, but there were other issues that we had.
Director Jordan?
I would just like to let everyone know that all of the invoices were sent, the invoices that are attorney-client privilege were sent to their attorney, and their attorney has viewed them and answered questions at the meeting about them.
And I was not speaking just to those. I was speaking to the details of other things that were not attorney-client privileged.
Councilmember Watanabe?
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm the only person here tonight that straddles both the roundtable and sitting on the roundtable, and also this committee, this Cities Association. I just want to add to what Chair Bernald has talked about tonight, and to just reiterate how long, at length, the committee talked on Tuesday, exploring, all of the options and wanting again to do the right thing. And after lengthy conversations, to be able to then say and agree, we want to pay ESA, we want to pay the attorney's fees, but notwithstanding, not having more detailed invoices regarding like the attorney's fees that have been presented. It just wasn't feasible. Cities, a roundtable, we've asked, there were several discussions about how much money do we have? And so there's a concern. And so we just want to make sure, this was expressed by all of the members that were in attendance, that we need to have a breakdown so that we can pay these invoices. But at the same time, it's not that we don't want to, we just want to be able to validate the charges and just make sure that that everything is copacetic, basically, for the lack of a better word. So I can say that, wholeheartedly, that the goal is to do the right thing, but at the same time, we just need to make sure that we have all of the information before we can go forward with the voices of the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Watanabe. At this time, we're taking questions, and we're still in public comment. So if there are any comments that you would like to make, let's go through a public testimony first. And then, so keep your hand raised if you have a question for those in attendance.
Question for Councilmember Bernal. I thought we were doing
Go
that.
ahead.
Yeah, I just want to be crystal clear on what what Councilmember Bernal said. So if I understand, you said you approved portions of the budget, you approved the portions related to airplane noise, and it was just the legal fee portion that you deferred. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. I'm having a spotty in connection right now. I'm not sure what's going on. But if that was addressed to me, yes.
Just one quick question. Was there any definition of the future $23,000 future assessment?
Mayor DuBois, who is the question directed to?
Councilmember Bernal. Yeah. But maybe she can't hear me.
And I put the specific line items back up on the screen for your reference as well.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor Jones. And so, Mayor DuBois, it looks like the 23,000 is an estimated future assessment. Huh?
Yeah, I just wonder what that is, and it seems like it could be an open-ended amount. Just curious how we know what that amount is.
And actually, that would not be. It sounds like Councilmember Bernal would not be able to answer that question, and so let's save that question for when we close public testimony. And then, are there any further questions of Councilmember Bernal? Yes, Mayor Constantine.
Thank you, Chair. And actually, this may be, I just wanted to make sure I asked this question because I don't know if our staff will be able to answer it, and I may need Councilmember Bernal to answer it. What information can we provide to the roundtable that can satisfy their need for clarification? And I'm judging by the silence that we don't have an answer for that. Am I correct in that assumption?
And that question was directed to Councilmember Bernal.
It's actually addressed to anyone who can answer it. And this is specifically, so Councilmember Bernal had brought up a concern that they don't understand. They need clarification on the bill.
Correct.
And I'm asking, what more can we provide them to satiate that clarification?
Okay. And I see Councilmember Bernal's mic is now gone. So if you can answer the question, Councilmember.
To the best that I can do. Thank you. I was muted, so that's why the rest of you did not hear me answering anything, because I wasn't allowed, I was unmuted. Again, I would refer you all to the letter that Kirsten Powell sent out this afternoon to the board. It's the most specific answer that you can be given, but we relied on both our MOU and our bylaws, which were created by Cities Association prior to the setup of the roundtable, and then they were approved by the roundtable members. So in Article 4, Roundtable Operation and Support, it says roundtable operation shall be guided by a set of comprehensive bylaws that govern the operation, administration, funding, and management of the roundtable and its activities. And then I need to refer you to not only the article that I read before, but also to Article 8, funding budget of the bylaws, which states roundtable staff, in consultation with the roundtable chairperson, will recommend an annual funding amount for the roundtable at least 60 days prior to the anticipated date of adoption of the annual roundtable budget, and inform each member of their anticipated increase or decrease. So this meeting that we held on Tuesday was held at your request, at Cities Association request, and we were doing the first part of what we could do per our bylaws to consider what the budget was going to be. At this meeting, we were not in a position per our bylaws to determine the amounts that were agreeable to our members to pay. So there was no way per our bylaws to be able to come to a determination. And it was also complicated because we did not have specifics that were definitely referred to in the MOU that I just read. It had to do with the breakdown of the budget. We were not able to align the information that we got. We were asking by what authority we were to pay. We were also asking what services we were receiving. So we were going definitely back to our bylaws and our MOU to ask for the specifics. And the members as a whole came to a determination that we did not have enough material to go forward, that the specifics that should have come earlier in a contract form, a line item form, had never been given to us. So without a contract, without the specifics, and following our bylaws and MOU, we were having difficulty determining what the amounts were. So the motion that we made was to approve the budget, was to go ahead and approve moving forward what you all are calling the special assessment, which is the $22,000 and $25,000. And it says there, as proposed or to be determined. We were looking for specifics on that. The details that are in our bylaws that say we need specifics, we need details. We can't rely on an estimate. So we couldn't justify the budget. We didn't have the answers for the line items in the proposed budget, which Cassie had prepared for us. And as a result, we said, okay, let's move forward and request the answers. And then when we meet again in November, then we can determine going forward, if dependent on tonight, that we will agree or alter the other line items in the budget for the fiscal sponsorship, the program coordinator, and the associated costs with the program coordinator.
So am I to understand now that you have requested specific information and that has been expressed to the association?
I will again refer you to the letter from our attorney today.
Yes, a letter arrived asking for more specifics. And when we close public testimony, we can, if I could ask Andy to pull that up so that when we deliberate, that'll be in front of you. That is in our packet. So.
Thank you, Chair.
The letter was sent to everyone today by Auden as well, and I'll pull it up and share screen as well.
Okay, but let's do that after.
Okay, sure.
Okay, and then Mayor Fleiker.
Thank you, Mayor Sayok. And my question is for Councilmember Bernald, if she's still on and she's unmuted.
Wait, hold on. Oh, okay. Sorry, never mind.
Are you there, Councilmember Bernald? Can you hear me?
I just got unmuted. Yes, I can hear you.
Great, thank you. So I have two questions. The first has to do with the 60 days you mentioned that I think are in your bylaws. When are those 60 days triggered? Like, did they start at this meeting you recently had?
They started at the meeting we recently had, yes.
Okay.
So we have another special meetings scheduled for November, sometime in November.
Okay. And then my second question, just to better understand this additional detail or information that the roundtable board needs. In my mind, there are two different things, because I completely understand why a board would need to see the proper documentation to confirm the bills before approving them. But in my mind, the more important question is whether or not the roundtable board discuss whether or not, if you're able to validate these bills, meaning these bills are related to the investigation and legal work done related to the roundtable, and also services provided to the roundtable, that you would cover the bills. Because in my mind, if you look at the documentation, and I agree with you, if you go through and there are things not related to the roundtable, then I expect those are things that the roundtable ad hoc committee would flag and pull out and say, no, this is not related to the roundtable. But if you go through the different documentation and you take the 2 months to go through the documentation, and there are items in there in the total amounts we're looking at right now that do relate to the roundtable. Did the roundtable board discuss a position on whether or not the roundtable would then pay those bills?
We were not in a position on Tuesday to question A or nay on the amounts, because we had not been given anything that said they were definitely related to the roundtable. I can't speak, as we all can't speak for our councils. I cannot speak for the entire board, but I had a sense that most of them wanted to be able to see those, how it related, and wanted to be able to discuss it with their councils and to be able to say A or nay. I believe I, as the chair, I can speak for myself. I, as the chair, if items were shown to be related to the roundtable, I would support them. Directly related to the roundtable, yes.
Thank you.
And I also would recommend that you allow Glenn Hendricks to speak too, because there's another viewpoint that's essential here.
We'll absolutely do that as soon as we finish any further questions. So any further questions of Councilmember Bernald? Okay, thank you.
Actually,
yes,
yeah, I have one quick question. Mary Lynn, for the outstanding charges, were all of the charges in question or just some of the charges?
Are you talking past, current, and future? Could you?
For past and current.
For past, we were not able to consider Cat Wellman's because it was not in the packet. There were certain things with Cassie's staff where we didn't go item by item. That was in the packet. There certainly were things from legal counsel Gary Baum that we didn't quite understand. So we didn't go item by item. Again, we just said overall we need more information. And when it did come to the proposed 25,000, that was where there was absolutely no way that we could approve or disapprove because we had no specific detail, which our bylaws say we have to have. And I had sent out questions prior to the meeting to Cities Association, and I'll read them if I may. I asked, under what authority is the roundtable being billed for the items listed in the special assessment? What is the information that can be given to the roundtable to make them more confident these invoices are legitimately roundtable expenses? What is the basis for the line items that make up the special assessment? What services will be provided for the amounts listed? More detail is necessary to determine if this is an appropriate expense on which to base a special assessment. What is the actual amount of the fund balance? I have seen different amounts in each new document. The beginning fund balance of $76,520 appearing as the SCSC Roundtable financial status and proposed budget fiscal year 21-22 has no basis in reality. In June, an account summary indicated the roundtable had approximately 17,000, which I verified with my own city's financial director.
Right.
As of last week, we had only $3,443.
Mary Lynn, I'm sorry for interrupting. That's kind of a more detail than I think that we could really process in this venue. But I just wanted to just clarify that the charges that you were able to review, there were some charges that you felt weren't valid, and there were other charges that you agreed were valid. That was the crux of my question.
We never said whether they were valid or invalid. invalid. We said we needed more detail.
Okay. Thank you.
And so a quick question, Vice Mayor Jones, the information that we have available that I know that Rania has been very gracious in helping you as the ad hoc committee member. All the information that we've provided, I assume that has been the same information provided to the roundtable?
Yes, and the questions that she listed, we did send a response to.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Zhao?
Oh, actually, thank you, Vice Mayor Jones. I think I was going to ask you, you said you answered the questions. Just look at this 4 line items, the special assessment. How did we come with that assessment in terms of amount? I think Marilyn was asking for the explanation. You said you sent the explanation to her already. I would like to know if we do have an explanation for all those charges.
So in terms of level of detail,
I'm trying to get through public comment, and
okay.
Vice Mayor Hendricks has been very patient. So
all right, we'll put a placeholder on that question, and
all right, no problem.
I'll answer it.
And if we have any, so if we can allow Vice Mayor Hendricks to speak now.
Madam Chair, should he be timed or?
Well, Mr. Vice Mayor Hendricks tends to be very brief and concise. So Vice Mayor?
I will try and be as concise as I can, but I'm going to try and answer the questions that I thought I've heard asked or respond to them. One of the first questions was about other options that we looked at. Really, the criteria that we were using, was it fiscally responsible to go with that organization? And did that organization meet our mission of what we were trying to do? And I think we thought that the other options were not fiscally viable until we saw how much the Cities Association was going to cost us. And maybe some of those are, now that we have a comparison, maybe they are fiscally viable. As an example of joint venture, their mission alignment did not align with what the roundtable's mission is. So just a couple of examples. About the invoice amount questions of what goes on, and people are saying, I think there's 2 elements to that piece. One is they were looking for a little bit of detail, but I think you also need to understand that the roundtable members, most of them were only seeing these items for the first time, given we haven't had meetings about them. Now, the ad hoc committee had a little bit more information because we've discussed it in some of our meetings. So the roundtable members were being asked to approve bills that they had never said, this is something we want to sign up for. And this was something, if you remember last January when we spoke, and I said, yes, the roundtable would be willing if we were the fiscal agent underneath the Cities Association, of course we'd be willing to pay appropriate fees. And with the assumption was that the ad hoc committee was going to work out what that was. And so many of the fees that are being asked to be approved were never jointly agreed to. They're something that just one party put on the table. And an example would be is in your consent item, you went ahead and approved a bill or an invoice. That's because there was already a budget and a line item and a discussion about what that was. Most of the roundtable members, this was the first time that they were seeing that. I think that we're seeing some of the stuff that's going on back and forth between the roundtable and the Cities Association really has to do with clarity of communication. I'm hearing that, well, a question was asked and it was answered. I might answer that a little bit differently. A question was asked and a response was given. Whether or not it actually answered the question is open for discussion. And then to Mayor Flegler's question about, did we decide that we would pay? I'll just go ahead and, again, speaking for myself, and if anybody cares to watch the tape, I think it was a very interesting meeting. I was quite adamant in saying that I didn't care about trying to get any more detail. I thought we should go ahead and pay anything that you guys have asked us for. And that's a kind of, of what you put in writing of what you wanted, including what you estimated as go forward pieces. I wasn't interested in that numbers just kept changing going forward. And I wanted to do that because I thought it was important for the roundtable to go ahead and pay what we perceive as roundtable costs. Because at the end of the day, who's going to pay all of these bills are the cities that we belong to. And I had a long discussion of trying to talk to the members of the roundtable. One way or the other, either, we're going to have, through our fiscal agent, you guys, will send a roundtable set of dues, not this special assessment stuff, and I can talk about that in a second. You're just going to go ahead and do a dues to the roundtable cities. And so you get roundtable money to go ahead and pay for those things. And if for some reason you don't, you're just going to send a different dues statement to the cities to say, go ahead and pay this stuff. And I think, there's in the future, and I said this to me, I think there's going to be a lot of questions about everything happened here. And I think it's a lot cleaner to go ahead and keep the roundtable costs off to the side so that as people are asking questions about what went on, we're not trying to confuse and conflate different things. Because I think that happens in the discussions about this topic all the time. And again, I just want to talk about this comment of special assessment. I don't understand why the dues needs to be broken into multiple different things. The special assessment line that you have listed as part of the dues that go to the cities to be paid is also still recreated or replicated under the expense line section. So I think the budget we should really be talking about is what are the line items of expenses that would be included in the budget, and all of those items minus whatever the remaining balance is a single line item of the dues that we want to send to the city. And again, talking about the cities, I think we need to try and simplify this whole discussion, because no matter what the roundtable does in approving or disapproving all of these things we're talking about, they all have to go to our cities to be voted on and say, here, go ahead and pay the invoice of what that is. So I tried to communicate all of these things to the roundtable members. And again, most of them were just seeing these costs, not only, that a line item exists, but how much it's for. And I think that, because they were seeing it the first time, is one of the reasons they were asking so many questions about what is this and why are we doing this and what's really included. And I think that's part of what can be resolved with better communication, better documentation that goes back for our next, before our next meeting. And I'd be happy to answer any more questions you might have.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor. Any questions of the Vice Mayor? I see, okay, Mayor Constantine.
I have read the letter, and I would like the roundtable to provide specifics on what they want specifically, so that we don't, because it sounds like we're playing a game of telephone. And I would just like some specifics rather than speaking in generalities, what exactly the roundtable needs to give them the information they need to determine whether or not they owe the money or not.
Is that, I'm assuming that's a question, but, or is that a comment and we can?
No, that was a question of what do they need? Because I read the letter, I don't see any specifics. I would like specifics on what they need to determine whether or not the bills are viable.
So Rich, this is Glenn. And I'm, Mary Lynn might tell me I'm smoking crack here, but we could try and go back and look at the tape of the meeting and try and extract out what those questions are. I mean, I could tell you what my questions are. Mary Lynn could tell you what hers are. To actually get a full 100% complete list from the roundtable. I mean, that might require another meeting. And I think timeliness is not what is important and not what we want to do. So, it may be possible to have somebody to go back and look at the tape and be able to extract out as many of the questions as possible. Because I don't disagree with your premise of what you're asking. But to say that, I might be able to generate 100% of what everybody else's questions might have been, all I could do is go back and play the tape and try and get to those.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor. And so would anyone else like to speak on this matter?
Before I go, Chair, I know this is going to be a little bit of out of procedure, But I could imagine that during your deliberations of once you close and have other discussions once the public is closed, you might end up having other questions that we as the roundtable ad hoc committee might be able to help clarify. So, you know, if you get to something like that, and I realize this is an unusual request, we would still be here to, you know, to try and answer any of that when you get into your deliberation type comments.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Appreciate that. Next speaker, Robert Holbrook.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd just like to offer a perspective as a member of the community that's concerned about airplane noise on a couple of matters regarding the roundtable's importance. And I think this is a good time to do it because I think that for a number of us in the community, there's a growing sense of existential angst around the existence of the roundtable and whether we will have a forum for our voices to be heard with the FAA. It's really hard to get the attention of the FAA. They pretty much insist on roundtable forums as the medium of interaction with them, other than responding to NPRMs and other formal things where you can't really engage with people. There has been motion. In January, the FAA produced the Neighborhood Environmental Survey, which is a radical restatement of the impact of noise on communities near airports. It tells us that noise levels that they thought were impactful for the last 45 years can now be found out as far as which previously were considered to exist, you know, within a few miles of an airport, can now be found out as far as Palo Alto. From San Francisco Airport, and so the actions of the roundtables, I think, are contributing to a voice nationwide. And I believe that our area is showing some of the peculiar talents of Silicon Valley in bringing a very technical and detailed approach to an organization, the FAA, that demands a technical and detailed response in order to get something to happen. We have national leaders in this area in our roundtable, and I think we're fortunate that we have a forum now that allows us to express, to take some of the best that Silicon Valley can offer and bring it to this difficult problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holbrook. Any further speakers tonight? I'm going to close public testimony. We turned back to our board discussion, and I know there were several questions. One was a question that Mayor Zhao provided to Vice Mayor Jones, and so I do want to get back to that, and then we'll open it up for further discussion. Do we need to keep this? Vice Mayor Jones, do you want to keep okay, there we go. Thank you.
I guess not. I didn't do that.
Oh.
Do you want to back up?
Yes, please. So, Liang, just to specifically address your question, the special assessment amount of $27,000.
Vice Mayor Jones, I believe it was Yan Zhao from Saratoga.
Oh, sorry, Yan. To specifically address your question, the 27,000 amount were all activities and costs associated with roundtable activity. And the hypothesis that we had in determining what should be billed to the roundtable was, are we engaged in any activity, any process, any time that's related to the roundtable that we would not be engaged in if the roundtable didn't exist? So, we try to create a nexus between what the roundtable should be billed. That is the framework that we use in terms of coming up with that cost. As far as estimated future assessments, that is a real rough number, the 23,000. It was an estimate, and it could be further refined. The roundtable is empowered to make any adjustments to these line items, with the exception of the special assessment. The fiscal sponsorship fee, 15%, based on our research, is somewhat the industry average of what fiscal agents charge. And then as far as the estimated salaries associated with the project coordinator, based on our analysis, that was just an estimate in terms of what the cost would be for the project coordinator and any incidental equipment and supplies and other things that he or she might need. So that's hopefully the answer to your question.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Abikoga.
Thank you. Thank you, Chappie. I just wanted to confirm that the explanation you gave just now, which was really helpful, was given to the roundtable members, because they seem to be having questions about what this is for, and your explanation just now to me seemed very clear. But I just want to make sure they heard that from you too, because I
didn't catch the first part of the meeting, so I can't say whether that was directly communicated to them or not.
Okay.
Hopefully it was.
So you weren't able to directly communicate that.
I didn't directly communicate to them.
Okay, great. And then I did have a question with future special assessment. Is there a possibility of that being some overlap with like the salary and expenses for program coordinator? Those are, I think, one of the big items was staffing. So yeah, I guess the question is, since we've line item that out, is there anything else in the special assessment that's included in the special assessment, I guess, other than, in my mind, I guess I was looking at staffing issues, but is there something else in that category? Future.
Provide on that. I believe with that, and I'm going to turn to Gary. If I say anything, please immediately stop me. But there are still costs that are associated with concluding the investigation that we estimate to be about 23,000.
Okay, so it's about, okay. It's related to the investigation.
Correct.
Okay. Andy would have to confirm whether or not there's any staffing costs, City Association staffing costs included with that. I don't know. I haven't seen the breakdown for that number.
Andy, you're on mute.
At this point, the cost was based on the invoices that we're receiving from separate groups. Also understanding that the roundtable is going to pass a budget, and they're not likely going to pass a second budget. So if it wasn't $23,000, it's not like we're going to bill them for $23,000, because that's what is budgeted. It's an estimate. That money, if they collected those dues, that would still be in their budget. And so it wasn't something that we were, that the cities association would take. That's just an estimate so that they didn't have to go back to their members if there were more dues. And it has been quite difficult because the bills came in. We didn't have bills for a while, and then we got a lot of bills, and that again. So, I mean, that's just an estimate based on what has been coming in.
And Councilmember Moore?
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering how these bills end up ultimately distributed among the members who are still part of the roundtable, and what happens because they're, to my knowledge, Santa Cruz is no longer with it. So what happens with that? Could someone explain, please?
Andy, can you explain that process?
These bills, yeah, the jurisdictions in Santa Cruz are no longer members, and neither is Montecito, so there are only 9 members. What the suggestion is that, and what was given to the roundtable was they have approved due structures that is within the MOU and their bylaws, and so we use that due structure to break it down so that every city was charged based on their due structure, and their due structure for the roundtable is based on a population rate.
And are there any further questions? Are there any further questions? And seeing no other further questions, any comments? Yes, Councilmember Watanabe.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Regarding the $23,000, I understand, and that keeps coming up a lot. But we, what I'm hearing tonight is I'm hearing this for the first time. We have not had an explanation of the $23,000 in relation to future costs, especially legal costs. And the concern also, and this has been discussed, and the ad hoc, we don't have a contract. The round table does not have a contract, or was not made a part of a contract to discuss or be a part of the investigation. And so you have to understand, we are being asked to pay for something that we have no idea what we're being asked to pay for. And so I think anybody would truly understand why I'd be concerned. This is not just to pay. This is our taxpayers' money. This is our city's monies. And so we need an explanation. And so those, I understand the questions, but from our end, and again, because unfortunately, Yang Chow is not here.
Unfortunately, and if we can have Gary respond, my understanding is that a contract isn't needed since the roundtable is not an entity that could sign the contract anyway. But if, Gary, if you could do that as a legal matter.
Sure. The roundtable is responsible for the costs that it generates, and that would include something like ESA. And ESA, perhaps a good example, and maybe the best example, has a contract with the Cities Association to provide services to the roundtable. And this is the same thing. So additional services were required for the roundtable. Those services were billed. Those bills were provided to the roundtable or to their attorney if they were attorney-client privilege. And therefore, there's an obligation on behalf of the roundtable to reimburse. There is no contract between the roundtable and the Cities Association to repay ESA, because we created the roundtable. I mean, we're their sponsor, and we've been the ones that essentially created them. So we're kind of part of the same thing.
Thank you. And Councilmember Montano, and then Councilmember.
Thank you, Chair. I do agree with the Watanabe that, Director Watanabe, that, we're being asked to pay for another agency's cost. But I know I see her point, but at the same time, I'm looking at us, because we are not members. Milpitas is not a member of the roundtable, and we are being asked to pay for their cost and their legal fees. And I'm even questioning whether to, why are we being, I don't feel it's fair that we should have to pay their cost. It just doesn't make any sense. And so I'm even questioning whether we should even be part of the Cities Association. Is there a law that that our city needs to be part of this? I'm really disappointed that we have not come to a resolution. And my concern is that our citizens, they're paying, these are taxpayers, and we're paying our membership dues. in good faith and in good faith that we are doing our due diligence, and yet we're paying for someone else's legal costs and their costs. I have a problem with that. So I'm just going to throw that out there, and I'll be talking to our city manager and see where we're going to go from here. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm hopeful Vice Mayor Montano will have resolution soon. As we've been bringing this up at every single meeting now, and it seems to be the only discussion item we seem to be focused on. So there is hope for closure. And so we will be looking for some motions today. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Chair. My question is for our legal counsel, and I think I've heard the answer already. So when the roundtable was formed, they had a belief that they would be responsible for all of their bills. That's my understanding. And if something like this happened, did they have the understanding that they would be responsible for these costs? That's one question. And the next is if it, and we don't know this information, it doesn't sound like anyone knows the results of the investigation so far, but I am concerned that members were allowed to or chose to leave the roundtable that we don't know if they had any involvement with what this investigation is. And so I'm concerned, and this is probably a roundtable legal counsel question. If someone left the group and it turns out that they had some responsibility, is there any way to try to help to pay the costs for it? Thank you.
I'm not able to comment on the investigation for somewhat obvious reasons. The first question was, did the roundtable have an understanding that they would be incurring expenses for an investigation that no one knew was going to happen? I think the answer is rather obvious. No. I would assume that they did not. We received a complaint from one or more of our employees or consultants, and we were legally required to investigate that complaint. And that required, unfortunately, just like it does in your city or in any other city, it requires retaining experts and legal counsel and investigators to investigate. We're required by law to do that, to protect our employees, to protect our consultants. And my understanding was that was done. I've only been part of this for 3 months and like to stick around for a little while longer. And that has been ongoing, and it's been expensive. We needed an attorney to monitor the investigator, and the investigator is also an attorney. And then I've had to get involved when there's been disputes with other city attorneys over the entire matter. So those costs have to be incurred. We're required to do it. We're required by law to do that. We're all hoping this gets wrapped up very quickly. It's been very painful for all involved. I think that's pretty apparent. I can't really say anything more. As far as the members leaving, I would suggest raising that with the Roundtable's counsel. I don't know. I don't have any idea what the answer is to that.
May I ask a follow-up or to clarify something through the chair?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. So my initial question, which you answered in a surprising way, was did they have an understanding that if they had some liability, that if something happened in that organization, did they know at the start that there was this potential that if there was that this happened, that they would be a responsible separate entity, not that they couldn't foresee that this would happen and that type of thing. I just want to know if people knew when they got into the organization that this potential could happen. I think it's a good lesson. I think for all of the members here, when should another roundtable of some sort for another issue be formed, that the organizing legal structure of it be really hammered out. Otherwise, what you're making it sound like is this is kind of like a buyer beware situation, and and for the people whose cities joined this organization in good faith in order to be helpful to their other cities and to help advocate. It's a very, very hard lesson I feel I'm hearing.
It was long before I was retained. I really don't have any information on what they considered. I understanding, and this is not by direct knowledge, that there was some discussion about not having insurance. I don't know that insurance would cover this. Typically it does not, but sometimes there is insurance available for it. I just haven't experienced it in my career.
And if we could move to Mayor DuBois.
Yeah, thanks. So I guess it feels like we're paying the price for what perhaps was a weak budgeting process. And again, this lack of an MOU in place for the roundtable to manage their costs, no budget amendment process, and lack of details on some of these expenses in the current budget proposal. It hasn't really been brought up yet, but I'm concerned about adding the program coordinator as an employee. Prefer to see that be a contracted position while all this financial status is being clarified. You know, and I am concerned about these expenses being incurred without the approval of the roundtable members, including what we're hearing, this future assessment, which is future legal fees. I think, you know, on our cities, we'd be pretty hesitant about open-ended expenses. We'd want to understand the potential validity of the claims and the likelihood of who would pay the fees. And so kind of based on everything I'm hearing tonight, I support the roundtable's request for more information on some of these expenses. It just seems like they're being fiscally responsible. You know, we heard it was the first time that many members of the roundtable saw these proposed budgets. And, you know, they have a process of 60 days to go back to their councils. And this budget is a big step up from the past budgets. You know, as I look through all the reports, you know, I can understand the request for additional detail. So I think it's prudent to determine whether some of these expenses that are incurred are valid or not. I mean, we're in a situation where this could be found to be a valid situation, or it could be found to be groundless. And I'm concerned that the expenses are being loaded up on the roundtable, you know, which may be for groundless claims. And so I think, you know, the positive here is they approved the core expenses related to their work. It seems reasonable to give them time and to provide more information on the other expenses, the 27,000, the 23,000, and the 28,000 in the sponsorship fee, what they're getting for that money. And I don't know if it's time for a motion. If it is, I'll make one. If it's not, I'd suggest what I would make, but are you accepting motions right now?
I have one more question from Councilmember Watanabe, and then let's see if there's any other, actually, I don't know if it's a question, any other comments, but I do want to weigh in. And I'll, after Councilmember Watanabe, if I could add some questions.
Okay. Well, so when it does come time for a motion, you know, I would suggest that we accept the roundtable's payment of the portions of the budget that they did approve, and that we would just take no action on the other expenses and return at a later date. So that's kind of where my head is. Thanks.
Okay, but Mayor DuBois, they did not approve. The only budget items they approved were for non-cities associations. I just want to clarify that with you.
Yeah, right. But except the 136,000, the 25,000 that they did approve.
Okay, and Councilmember Watanabe?
Thank you, Chair. Once again, I'm actually raising my hand. If I know Councilmember Bernald and Vice Mayor Hendricks had asked if we could keep the door open to allow them to speak. And Vice Mayor Hendricks has expressed a desire to address some of the comments made by General Counsel Baum. So I wonder if we would indulge him that opportunity.
Okay, real quick though, a couple clarifications that I wanted to make. And then if there was a specific question that Councilmember Hendricks wanted to ask of us, we don't approve the roundtable budget today. So so if Director Jordan, can you clarify this process? They're sharing with us what they approved.
Correct, and their budget isn't final. They were to present and approve a budget, like a preliminary budget, so that they could. That's usually when you give notice that what your dues are going to be. But they didn't approve a full budget, and in November they will come back and approve another budget. But typically, it's not dissimilar to our process or some of your city's process where you approve a preliminary budget. So there's nothing for us to approve.
And if I could, I'm going to also ask, I'm going to make some comments and then I'm going to ask Treasurer Flagger to also weigh in. At the last board meeting, the number one item we discussed was Cities Association budget. And the fact that we were now dipping into reserves because of this investigation. And that was the reason why we're going to ask Roundtable to pay for these costs. So the detail and the level of detail that is being asked of us, we cannot provide. We have provided what we have, and it will require further money for the Cities Association to put more effort into providing the level of detail that we're not even sure they'll accept. And so wearing your hats, your Cities Association fiscal hats, we will be spending more money to answer more questions, and we do not have any further funds. So I am saying this as your president. I raised the flag last meeting. I'm raising this again. At some point, we have to make a decision, cut our losses, and move on. I think Robert Holbrook spoke to the work that the Roundtable does and the great work that they're being inhibited to do. We are not able to do our work. And I think we're just going back and forth. And so again, I'm asking all of you to think of their fiscal hats, because we are spending more money to just go back and forth to answer questions that we don't know how else to answer because we can't under attorney-client privilege. So I do want to raise that issue. And Treasurer Flagger, if there's any additional you want to provide as our treasurer, I defer to you, but I just want to be mindful and have everyone mindful that we don't have unlimited funds to just do a back and forth at every single meeting.
No, and thanks for that, President Sayok. I think it's a very important point to make, because there are two organizations that are involved here, the Roundtable and the Cities Association. There isn't a third organization out there with different members where if the Roundtable decides not to pay these expenses, we can go to. It comes back to us. And so I do want to go back to what our general counsel said, or on the fact that we did not have a choice here. This was not a situation where the board, and it's the entire board that made this decision, that we decided to pursue this investigation. We were legally required to do it. And so we didn't have a choice. We had to incur these expenses because of the laws related to this issue. The second thing I wanted to touch on is, the use of the term valid expenses. And I do want to go back to something Vice Mayor Hendricks said, and I know he was only expressing his personal view, which is we should just, the Roundtable members, and my city is a member of the Roundtable, should really just pay these bills that are related to the Roundtable, the total amount. And I think if we do the math, it's a few $1,000s per city and the county, so that we can move forward and do the good work that we heard from the member of the public and we just heard from Member Sayok. I really was disappointed to hear that the Roundtable didn't approve it. I completely understand being fiscally responsible and wanting to look at the bills, but I would also think it would be in everybody's best interest if the Roundtable had also taken the position that if they determined that an expense was related to the Roundtable, then they would cover it. And I think that was a miss on the part of the roundtable at their last meeting, because I understand wanting to look at the invoices, wanting to look at the bills, because you never know. But the bottom line is, if these expenses are related to the roundtable cities and entities should really pay these bills. And as we heard from Director Montano, there are cities here that are not part of the roundtable. And so it's really unfair for us to ask them to cover these expenses that are not related to their cities. And I don't know what will happen, in November. I am very nervous about that. And that's why I'm still sitting here thinking whether or not I would support a motion continuing this to November, because I'm very concerned we'll be having this exact same conversation. We could actually resolve this now and just have the roundtable pay these expenses so we can all move forward. And as the President Sayok said, the bills will keep increasing the longer we drag this out. So thank you for that. And I think that's all I have. But I am still considering, which of the two recommendations I will support, because I'm very concerned we're going to be back to where we are today. And the last thing I'll say as the treasurer is, again, if the roundtable board votes against paying these expenses, then it does come back to the full Cities Association. And so the 9 jurisdictions that make up the roundtable, they will also have to pay a portion of these expenses, because there's no third entity out there. It's either roundtable or the Cities Association, and 9 of the roundtable members are part of the Cities Association. Thank you.
Councilmember Abikoga.
Thank you, Chair. So I completely agree with both our chair, our president, and our treasurer, and what has been said. If I recall, and I think it was in our slide deck, we voted in September. The decision was that we would ask the roundtable to pay the bills, and if at their September 7th meeting, and if they didn't, we would move towards termination. We can flip it and say, if they don't pay by then we will no longer be their fiscal agent. And that's where I have been. That's the direction that I've been taking. So this whole thing about, getting more information about what the bills are, that wasn't what we voted on in September. So I would like for us to follow our original vote. I will say though, honestly, and I'm trying to really pare this down, simplify. Someone was saying, let's just simplify this. And coming from a city that is on both the roundtable and the Cities Association, and I believe my counterpart on the roundtable said this too, we're going to pay the bill either way. So honestly, it doesn't really matter to Mountain View, and I don't know why it matters to other cities that are on both. I'm more concerned, and this is just a fairness issue for me. I believe in fairness. I don't think the members of the Cities Association who are not on the roundtable should have to pay the bills. And so I don't know why we're going down this rabbit hole. In an ideal world, we all should be one entity. We really are. We've spent a whole year on this. We have delayed this decision all year, and we can't get anything else done. And from a city like Mountain View, I don't think we really care. And we're talking about $100,000 either divided by 15 ways or 9 ways. And I haven't done the math yet, but for Mountain View, I think it's a difference of maybe $5,000. And I understand every city is different, and maybe that is a lot for some cities. But I just don't think it's fair for us to have cities that are not a part of the roundtable pay these bills. And we can't dispute not paying these bills. We have to pay them. Someone's got to pay them. So, why are we going down this? Can we just decide or just, I don't understand why the roundtable doesn't understand that. But to me, the fact that we're getting down to this kind of minutia really makes me question whether we, I just don't think we should continue being the fiscal sponsor, because I just have lost the, faith that we're not going to keep doing this in the future. And, I looked at the other alternatives. There was one that was missing that I have heard of, actually talked with my roundtable reps about hiring a contracting agency to be the fiscal sponsor and do the legal work and even the program coordination. That wasn't included in the alternatives list as far as I saw. In terms of being deemed infeasible, and Glenn said this earlier, I think it was deemed infeasible because initially the cities association wasn't charging for program coordination, legal counsel, and a lot of these other services that were being provided. And so, yeah, they were getting a discount. But, now we know that these are necessary. And so if you, I think, compare the current cost, which is the budget that we set forth, they could probably go out again and probably get comparable costs or estimates. So I think there are alternatives to the roundtable. I just don't think, it has to be the cities association. And in light of this, I just don't see us being able to, to be able to work harmoniously. I've just kind of lost faith in that. And I just don't think it's fair to have non-members of the roundtable have to pay these bills.
And so I think, okay, so Councilmember Turner, and then eventually we're at 8:43. And so there is on your screen recommendations that were provided by recommended motions provided by the executive board on Friday. But before we begin there, Councilmember Turner. Councilmember, you're on mute.
Oh, yes. I have been very quiet listening to this, but I want you to know that I will not be able to vote on getting my city to pay for these services that we don't use. So this is not something that I will even take to the city to ask them to do. So thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, so Mayor Du Bois, you had a motion, and again, there's a recommended motion by the executive board, but Mayor Du Bois, go ahead.
Thank you. So again, just to clarify, they did meet this Tuesday. They did approve some of the expenses. I think my emotion is essentially the second bullet point, but to go ahead and accept the part of the budget they've already approved. And I think you were questioning whether that made sense or not. So
well, let me make sure. Do we have to approve direct? We don't, right? There's no motion necessary to approve their budget. I guess that's why I was questioning it.
I see. Okay. So if they want to go ahead and pay that portion, that's up to them. Is that what we're saying?
Director Jordan, I don't know the answer.
I'm sorry, could you, Mayor Du Bois, can you restate your question, please?
Yeah, so again, my understanding is the roundtable didn't have any issues with kind of a major part of the budget. So I guess, is there a process here where they would go ahead and pay that portion?
If they came back to their meeting in November and changed their budget, I mean, the budget was given to them in coordination with the chair to give them a starting point. They made no motions to change anything. They just said they needed more information. They have to go ahead and prove they need to finalize their budget in order to invoice in November.
Okay, what I understood was on the slide was they actually approved major portions of the budget.
Well, their bylaws, it's a two-step process where they present a budget and give formal. Last year, what they did 60 days beforehand, they approved a budget, and then they came back at the next meeting and formally approved it. When it was formally approved, then the invoices can go out. They have to, it's just part of the public, like a first reading and a second reading.
Correct. So did they do the first approval for?
They only approved part
ESA?
of the budget. They only approved the dues assessment, I believe. And then they approved ESA and their own attorney for their meetings.
Okay. All right. Well, may not be support for this, but I would go ahead and move the second bullet point that we would provide them whatever additional details we can. And then expect approval by November 11th.
And Mayor Blankley?
I just wanted to know if going for the first option means that non-member cities are then paying for this.
The first option, as I understand, and again, there's no motion on this.
I know.
We have not decided how to. Right now, we're paying out of our reserves, and then so we still, as a body, have to decide how to move forward with our remaining funds. So this doesn't talk about fiscal. This is, we've paid for these bills, legal bills currently, and that's
right. Thank you. Okay, no, this question relates to how I would vote on the motion that's at hand, and that's needing to understand that if we were going with the first one, that does not mean that you're committing as a non-member city, like Gilroy is not a member of Roundtable. So going with number one, if number two fails, does not mean that Gilroy is committed to footing these bills.
Correct. If we could keep the, actually, if we could keep the motions were helpful. And if we could keep them on the screen. That is correct. It does not commit us. But if I could just clarify to the maker of the motion, that does answer, that provides a little bit more detail to Mayor Blankley. The second motion, the motion on the table, which is the second bullet, to provide Roundtable with additional details, that does require Cities Association to expend more time, therefore more costs, to try and secure additional detail. And so I would then, so that's, again, a financial cost.
I understand that part.
Okay, so is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Councilor Watanabe?
President Sayak,
Yes.
if I may, could I answer Mayor Blankley's? Could I add to your answer to Mayor Blankley's question? Because I want to make sure she understands. So as President Sayak said, Mayor Blankley, the first action would not automatically mean that non-members of the roundtable would then have to pay this amount. But it does mean for either action one or action two, if the roundtable doesn't pay either now or in November, that we're going to have to revisit the different options. And one of the options is for us to go back to all the Cities Association members mid-year, mid-budget, in order to get the contribution we need to pay this amount. So I want to make sure that everybody understands one of the fallback options to the roundtable not covering these expenses.
Right, which applies to both of the bullets, right? Thank you.
Actually, and I believe we have bullets that our legal counsel actually provided more clarification to. Andy, can you provide those so that it's crystal clear to all of our members what they're voting on? Okay, and so.
Sorry for the confusion, but page 97 of your packet, and I've put it up here on the screen. These are legal counsel provided these, and these were based on the executive board's discussion on Friday.
Okay, okay, first we have a motion on the floor, and actually Mayor DuBois' motion is not one of these three. So I'm sorry to do this again to you, but can you put back his motion? And if we can, is there a second to Mayor DuBois' motion?
I seconded Watanabe.
So Councilmember Watanabe. So again, to all those, we are looking at the second bullet that has a motion and a second. Now, are there comments to the motions or questions before we call the question? So I see Councilmember Watanabe. Do you still have more questions or comments on this?
I have a comment, Chair Sayak.
Sure.
Okay, and that is just to correct, make a correction, that the motion, the roundtable's motion for the next roundtable meeting, which we planned for in November, was to review and approve or reject each individual item from Cities Association.
Okay.
I just want that clarification.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Councilmember Moore.
Okay, I'm not sure that clarification helped me. And the reason why is when I look at these two potential actions and then versus what's on page 97, I find it a little bit confusing to try to condense those options on page 97 into these two bullet points. And where I'm struggling is the bullet one, Cities Association is to withdraw and determine process and timeline. When I look at the previous slide from that, it looks to me like the roundtable did agree to pay for the two amounts. I need to go back a slide.
And I should clarify, what you have in front is our actions that Mayor Klein and Mayor Jones, working with the ad hoc committee, provided. And
okay.
So that's why I'm so sorry to confuse everyone. We happen to be on this. What was on page 97 of our staff report is what the executive board on Friday had made a recommendation for, that our legal counsel, Gary, has also vetted. So that's why there's confusion. And because of procedural matter, Mayor DuBois had already made that motion. We have a second, and that's why that's the one that you're seeing on the screen.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The confusion I have is that it looks to me on this slide that the roundtable did agree to pay for the ESA consultant and legal services, the first two, that's a done deal. They're going to pay that bill. I think I understand that correctly.
It's not a bill, it's a budget for the upcoming.
Okay, thank you. And then the second, so the motion that we have, it looks to me like these bottom four items are going to, if we agree to it, go to the roundtable simply for clarification. But what I'm reading is that if it's not approved, even if it's been clarified for them, if they don't approve it, you're going to withdraw. So it almost seems like we're going to end up at, yes, you're going to spend some time from the Cities Association to answer their questions. I get that, but I'm seeing that the end result, that if they don't want to approve those four bottom items, that the end result is the same, that you will withdraw as fiscal sponsor. So am I understanding that correctly? That they don't really have a choice. It'll be explained to them, but they still need to approve it.
Okay, and Vice Mayor Jones and Mayor Klein, these were your recommended actions that Mayor DuBois recommended. So can you provide information on?
Yes, yes, Chair. So Councilmember Moore, for the real issues are around the special assessment amount of 27,000 and also the 23,000 estimate. Those are and more so the expenses that have been incurred are the real crux of the discussion in the issue. Those are the dollars that we're looking to get reimbursed for. The other line items like the fiscal sponsorship fee, can be negotiated. There could be some more clarification and refinement around the program coordinator role, but we're specifically focused in on the outstanding invoices that haven't been paid and any potential future costs that are going to be incurred.
And Mayor Flynn?
Yes, and I think that's the biggest thing here is, much like the costs incurred for other operations by the roundtable itself in the past, and hopefully the legal costs for the investigation wrap up quickly. But it's basically from an assessment standpoint, looking at kind of what we've incurred this year specifically related to the roundtable. From a cities association standpoint in the investigation, as well as some sort of estimate going forward. And I think that's the critical thing, and the budget was the draft budget of looking, what we think, and this is the whole thing of having the roundtable make changes to that budget for the final approval going forward. So anyway, that's a quick update.
And since Mayor Klein and Vice Mayor Jones, you provided this information to them, they want more information. What additional information can you provide?
I'm not sure what additional information we can provide. I know that the conversations we've had in the ad hoc, the plan was to go through each invoice, identify line items that were in agreement, ones that had additional questions, and ones that were in dispute, and then to work through the ones that where there were questions and ones that were in dispute, and provide the roundtable with, I guess, clarifying, answers or additional information. We're still waiting actually to receive a response with, the individual line items identified so that we can provide clarity and answers.
And so in your opinion, are those answers that you and Larry can answer on your own without incurring any further costs from from Gary, from Andy, from any of our third party?
That's a hard question to answer, Chair. Some I'm sure we can. Others it might require input from Andy, and some might require some legal input.
So it'll incur more costs.
There's that potential, yes.
Okay, thank you.
A high potential.
Mayor Zhao?
Okay, I think we talked about this already. I just want to make sure. So in case roundtable not going to approve the budget, so this will come back to the cities association, and someone has to pay for it, right? So cities have to pay for it. So the thing is, the fees, I guess we have to charge more to each cities, or I don't know how many cities, maybe just, whatever needs to be worked out. What happens, the cities won't approve the fee increase, then what? Because all the budget has been approved, since I'm new to this cities association, this is my first year. So when the fees have to be paid by each city, so the increased fees, let's say if it's not approved by the city council, then what?
So that's a very good question. And these are all hypotheticals. I can only speak for myself. Depending on the motion, similar to what we did at the last meeting, Treasurer Flagger, Director Jordan, and I will look at what we have. We'll present you a budget with how much we have, what's remaining, and then as a full board, every city will determine how we want to spend our remaining funds. And it still remains whether or not we will charge additional. I can tell you, as a city that is not a part of Roundtable, I will not go back to my city to ask for these costs to be paid for. I don't believe it's fair. And I think other non-Roundtable members have shared that sentiment. And so there is a potential that we have to decide, okay, then we run our expense to zero. And we then have to decide, is that how we move forward? So I think at the next meeting, Treasurer Flagger and I will have to look at our budget. And if you recall, at the last meeting, I shared with every single city and what we had, how much we were dipping into reserves. And we have yet to finish the priorities we've identified. And so that's what weighed on me last month and why I wanted closure on this item. And that's why I want closure on this item today. We are spending money talking about this nonstop. And so Councilmember Moore.
Thank you. I'd like to make a substitute motion. The Cities Association, I move that the Cities Association is to withdraw as fiscal sponsor and determine process and timeline with an end date of December 31st, 2021.
I'll second that.
So through the chair, we can have discussion on this. And I believe the process is that my substitute motion gets voted on first, then we go back to the original.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And so we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? There's discussion on the second motion. Okay.
Can we hear the motion again, Chair?
Yes, and I believe if I can, which, Andy, is it one of the ones that we've already on page 97?
I believe it was actually in the slide.
Okay.
The first bullet in the slide.
You go to that.
If I'm not mistaken, but Councilmember Moore can correct me.
Through the chair, yes, it was the first bullet on item 4, potential actions.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Item 4, potential actions.
Not on this page.
Not on this page. So Andy, I believe, or Auden, I believe it's the Chappie slide.
It was Chappie's slide, I believe.
Yes.
Okay, and then if you could show that. So. Okay, and then Gary, I know you looked at the ones that we had provided in our packet. Is there any clarifying language that we need to include from a legal perspective?
No, I think this addresses it. We'll have to determine a process, but we can do that. To me, this is direction to staff and council to determine a process to reach this goal.
Okay, and Vice Mayor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. And Councilmember Moore, I definitely understand the sentiment and the rationale and motivation behind your motion. I don't know if I'm a masochist or what, but I'm not going to support the motion. I'm going to support the underlying motion. I think that we can reach an agreement and resolve this issue with a little more time. Obviously, there's no guarantees, but based on my involvement and work in this process and all the hard work of the ad hoc committee, I think that it is possible. It is worth an opportunity to at least see if we can do it. And so, again, totally understand the motivation behind just wanting to put a fork in this and call it done, but I'm not there yet. So I'm not going to support the motion on the floor. I will support the underlying motion.
Okay. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Vice Mayor Montano.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm with all these different discussions. It for some reason I'm a little bit confused now. So the maker of the motion is going for he's moving for bullet 2, right?
No, the current motion on the floor is by Councilmember Moore of Cupertino. It's the very first bullet. Cities Association is to withdraw as fiscal sponsor and determine process and timeline with an end date of December 31, 2021.
Okay, great. That's the one that I'm supporting. So, all right, thank you.
Okay, Mayor Klein.
Yes, and I'll echo what Chappie just said. From my standpoint, I do think that, and we've had at least one member of the public speak, I do think the roundtable has an important place in our community. I do think, and Chappie and I and the rest of the ad hoc have been working to try to find that bridge to so that we could actually be the fiscal agent. when they basically said that no other fiscal agent really made sense. I do think that, their hesitance to pay is causing some of the issues as far as this is concerned. I do think that I wish that from a organizational standpoint, they had approved without asking, it's like, or tentatively approved with additional information so that the chair could have been able to basically push this across a line from a payment standpoint. Ultimately, it's costs. It comes down to costs. I do think that, clearly defining how our two organizations work and what we provide, things that weren't done when the first bylaws were made out, making sure that those issues could be resolved. And I think that is feasible from creating new bylaws, could have been done here. So I don't think, from my standpoint, we're to the point of exiting as their fiscal agent before December 31st or on December 31st. So I will not be in support of this motion. I do think that there's value here, and assuming we can get through the final issues and making sure that the roundtable is paying any costs incurred by our organization, and that would be kind of the only way that we get through this. I do think that would make sense. So I will not be in support of this motion at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Klein. Mayor Fleiger?
Thank you. And I was leaning towards supporting the substitute motion that's on the floor, because as I said earlier, I think in November we'll be in the same place, and why spend 2 more months doing the same things when we're going to end up in the same place. But I have a lot of respect for Vice Mayor Jones and Mayor Klein. And as they've acted as our ad hoc committee and they've been working directly with the round table, I am somewhat inclined to defer to their recommendation to not support the first bullet action. But if I look ahead and the first bullet fails, then as to the second action, I would recommend that we also have the round table cover any costs incurred between today and November 11th, 2021, related to providing additional details to further justify why we should give them 2 additional months, so that the Cities Association and our cities do not incur additional expenses because the roundtable needs an additional 2 months.
Unfortunately, that's not that motion is not on the floor right now. So if that motion comes back.
Correct. So keep that thought, Mayor Fleiger. And so Councilmember Moore?
So I would actually, thank you, Chair. I would like to know if that is a friendly amendment now before we begin voting, because it seems kind of irregular that we would vote on something and then allow potentially a friendly amendment to happen after the substitute motion is voted on. I personally, I think that if the friendly amendment is being made, it needs to be made now, and then Member Dubois would decide if he's accepting the friendly amendment and the seconder on that. I personally, I think we need to know it up front before we start voting what the options are.
So I would defer to legal counsel to advise us on the process, but it would be a friendly amendment.
Well, we're not following Robert's rules if we do what you're saying, but in order to reach the same point, you can withdraw your motion. That would restore the former motion, and then you can follow the substitute process. I'm sorry to make it more difficult, but we follow Robert's rules.
That's fine. So I just on my own say I withdraw my motion.
Yes.
Okay.
And does your second withdraw as well? There's no motion on the floor without
That's
a
fine.
without a first.
Let's withdraw. Yeah, let's withdraw. Let's see if we can get that amendment to the second one.
Okay.
So just to clarify the friendly amendment, it would be to add that any additional expenses between now and then would be added to the budget.
Yes, related to this work of getting the roundtable the additional details they're requesting.
Right. So I'll accept that.
And so let's start with Councilmember Watanabe.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to read one of the motions. It was the second motion that was made at the meeting on Tuesday. It was made by Anita Anandar to direct Cassie staff to limit any work associated with the roundtable to the bare minimum needed for the roundtable board to hold a public meeting to approve bills and any other technical work that is necessary to continue their own work. So we as a body agreed that we do not want Cassie taking on additional expenses. I mean, but just for the bare minimum that is necessary. We understand that. And I believe it was a unanimous vote. And so we're trying to be respectful of Cassie and their staff's time, but at the same time, paying the bills for the roundtable to pay the bills.
Okay.
I hope that makes sense.
It does, and I appreciate the clarification. So Councilmember Watanabe, you bring a good point in. You were straddling both. So what is considered the bare minimum? Like what additional information? I think that would be helpful, because as I'm looking at the additional details, there are certain details that we have provided through Vice Mayor Jones, all the information we have. And so that is what is preventing me from voting on this motion. I don't know what else can be provided to satisfy the questions that have posed.
I have a question.
Okay, who raised, who was that?
Montano.
Yes, Council Vice Mayor Montano.
Thank you.
Point of order, Chair.
Yes.
Point of order, Chair. I believe you asked Chair Council Member Watanabe a question. Did you want an answer to that question, or?
I assume the silence was that there was no answer, but I don't want to infer. So
I think she's maybe having internet problems. So I think if you give her a chance to answer.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, I think I'm back on again.
Okay.
If it was for me.
Yes, it was actually.
And Chair, if you would repeat the question, please.
So the question was, what is considered the bare minimum? And if you could provide, I know that we asked the question of Vice Mayor Hendricks, but what additional detail would satisfy you? We've provided all the bills that we have. They are all specific to the roundtable costs, and we've provided the investigative costs to your attorney. So what additional detail would be helpful?
That I don't review the bills, and I would hope that maybe Councilmember Bernal could. I know that she could answer that question a lot better than I can, because she always reviews the invoices. But the roundtable is willing to pay all fees properly attributable to the roundtable after review of more details, and that is also in the letter that was submitted this afternoon.
Okay, thank you. And so Councilmember Moore, and then Mayor Constantine.
Okay, thank you. I'm just kind of wondering if there's some way that perhaps legal counsel has a suggestion for how to word this, because it seems almost as though that the friendly amendment trying to put a cap on it of some sort is something that would need to go back to the roundtable. They would have to have a discussion and say $1,500 is the most that we want to see spent on providing this information, and we arrive at that as $300 per hour, 5 hours worth of work, something like that. I don't know if there's a way to do that, but it seems like that's what's being asked, and I don't want to have more delay in order to arrive at how to word this. Or can it be something just on good faith that we're all working together, and that we understand that there's not going to be a $20,000 bill to provide this information. I think and I understand the concern for fiscal responsibility. So if there's any suggestion on how to work through this.
Well, if I'm following, it's to just you're asking that the city association minimize the costs in addressing the concerns of the roundtable. Is that what you're asking as part of the motion?
Thank you. It does appear that there's a concern that the language that's the bare minimum doesn't really have any weight to it.
And you can certainly put a number on there, but recognize, I mean, but then you'll get whatever you'll get with a number that you allocate. But there are still ongoing costs, as you're aware, to the investigation. So that's going to be another, that's a separate bill that's going to come up for that.
Okay,
bills.
so yes,
and that can't be affected by this because we're required to finish that.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Constantine.
Thank you, Chair. To your question that you had asked Member Watanabe, I asked that same question to Chair Banal and did not get an answer. And that is my concern, is that the goalpost is going to be constantly moving. And I believe it was your question, Chair, or somebody else's question was, what more could we give other than the invoices? There's no more information that we can give. There's no more clarification that we can give. This is the bill. This is what the service was provided. You pay it or you don't pay it. I don't know what more you need. And to the ad hoc committee, I do respect their work, but their charge was never to figure out how to keep the roundtable with the city association. As on the executive board, we voted for the roundtable to find another fiscal agency. It was never for them to remain with the Santa Clara County City Association. But somehow that did not get forwarded, and somehow the ad hoc committee's now job became, how do we keep the roundtable with the city association? And now we've blown into this investigation now that has preceded everything else, that is all encompassing. It has taken us over 3 hours to discuss one item.
Yep.
This is something that's not going to go away. The goalpost is going to continue to be moved. There's nothing more that we can provide the roundtable for them to satiate their desire to get more information. This to me is just more obfuscating. I will not be supporting the motion for that fact, because this is not going to change. This is something that we voted on in December to dissolve, and here we are now in September. We're almost a year into this, and we're still having this discussion, and we're still chasing our tail, and I don't see an end to it. So I will not be supporting this motion for that reason. Thank you, Chair.
Vice Mayor Jones.
Thank you. And Mayor Constantine, you bring up some excellent points. I have 134,000 hours of life left, and I burned up a whole bunch of them on this project. So I feel you. I want to offer a potential solution to this dilemma. So how the process should work is that the roundtable chair comes to the ad hoc and says, these are the specific issues and questions that we have on the invoice. We would take that information and we would go to the executive director and say, this is what's being asked. How much time do you think it would take to accomplish these tasks? The executive director would tell us it'll take 10 hours or 20 hours or however long it takes. And then we would go back to the roundtable and say, we can satisfy your requests. It's going to require this amount of time. Do you approve this expenditure? And they say yes, and we get it in writing, and then we incur those costs. That's how the process should have always happened. It didn't, because we didn't have the guardrails in place. But we can address that through the ad hoc and create a process that will satisfy everybody's concerns and needs. So that's my recommendation to support the motion.
Are there any further comments? Okay, so again, clarification, there's a motion on the floor. Actually, if we could remove the highlight, it's the second bullet, which is to provide the roundtable with additional details regarding requested budget line items. I'll let the others continue the rest. And I think we've discussed this ad nauseam, and Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm not quite understanding. Are we having another friendly amendment that's saying that we're going to have the ad hoc committee go speak or to the chair and have the questions answered that way? Do we need to formalize that?
So the maker of the motion, Mayor Du Bois, it's entirely up to you.
I just understood that to be clarifying the process. I don't know if we need it in the motion, okay. But we did accept the other friendly amendment, which isn't on the screen. Just keep that in mind.
And that would be helpful. The friendly amendment, Mayor Fliger, is that the additional cost between now and November 11 would also be reimbursed.
But what I understood Chappie to say was we use that process to keep the costs down. And that's how we'll move forward.
And so any further questions to the motion? Okay.
Chair, I do have a question. So it was never clarified from Member Watanabe what that clarification would be that they would need. And again, this goes to my point. There's never anything specific. There's never anything concrete. We never know exactly what they need or want to move through the process. So I don't know. I don't know if that is something that Member Watanabe can answer now, but okay. I don't know what reasonable means. What does that mean? And what criteria would the roundtable then use to say yay or nay?
Okay. Mayor Constantine, all I can do is use my experience working in the legal field for X amount of years. And I know there are several attorneys on the board here. Hopefully they'll understand this explanation as well. When you get an invoice, I mean, there are always questions about things that were billed. And because sometimes there's double billing, there may be triple billings. And so I worked long enough to know where a client would have a question, like Raul is a client right now, are working under the fiscal agent of the Cities Association. There are questions about items, line items on the invoice. We need clarification. It seems at times that there may be double billings. There needs to just be clarification so that we know that what the roundtable is responsible for and wanting to be fiscally responsible for is that we have an explanation, a full explanation, and we haven't received that yet. I have looked at the invoices, and again, going back to my years in the legal field, there needs to be more clarification, and it's not unexpected. It's not unusual to have these requests. So really what I feel the roundtable, what they're asking for is nothing unusual. We just want to make sure that we are being fiscally responsible. It's not that we don't want to, it's not that the roundtable doesn't want to pay Cities Association. We have never, ever not paid a bill. It's just as a result of this investigation that has come up and all of these legal expenses that we are not aware of because of attorney-client privilege, we are asking questions so that we are being fiscally responsible and we want to do the right thing. I hope that answers your question.
Member Watanabe, if maybe I heard what you said, but maybe if you turn your camera off, your voice won't stutter a little bit. I did hear everything you said, but it might give this a little better. And through the chair, may I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Member Watanabe, have you received, since the beginning of the year, have you received bills from the City Association? Has the roundtable received bills from the City Association?
Yes, there have been additional bills, yes.
And has the roundtable asked any questions of those bills?
Yes, the questions are still being asked, Mayor Constantine. Yes.
From the beginning of the year, you've had, And those questions were never answered? I mean, we're in September now.
Again, I would have to defer to the chair because she deals with the invoices more so than I do. I'm sorry, I can't answer.
Thank you very much. Chair, I call the question.
Okay. And any further? Actually, Auden, let's call the question. I don't see.
I do need to point something out.
Yes.
Sorry. The bills that were presented, aside from mine, the legal bills, are attorney-client privilege, and we can't have our attorneys meeting with the entire roundtable answering questions about their bills on the investigation. It's going to violate attorney-client privilege. I don't really see that that's a viable solution here.
Actually,
I'll point that out.
And thank you for clarifying that, because I believe Vice Mayor Jones had shared that all the information that we have has been answered, or as Vice Mayor Hendrick said, we've responded to. Not it has been answered, I think is the question. We cannot provide any more detail or specificity to any of the costs associated with the investigation. So let's just manage expectations. That will not change. Those bills will not provide any more information. So we can ask the question and we can punt it back to them, but in November, there is no additional information on those bills that will be sent. So that is to protect the identity of everyone involved. And I would hope that those parties are appreciative of the fact that we are trying to prevent confidentiality. So I believe with that, Vice Mayor Montano, you have the last comment, and then we're
Chair, I'm sorry,
Okay.
I did call the question. Your point of order, Chair, I did call the question.
Oh, okay. I apologize. I didn't hear that. So, Auden, if we could go ahead and call the question.
Okay, I cannot share my screen at the moment.
Okay, if you could. Now,
You can, oh, okay.
Is everyone clear on which motion we're voting on?
Can you repeat that again? Just to be clear.
this is the second motion that was on the table that cities that I think we're giving them until November 11, and Vice Mayor Jones and Mayor Klein will continue to work with them on providing details.
Okay, thank you. Dubois,
Yes.
Dubois, aye. Zhao,
Sorry, I.
Zhao, aye. Moore,
Aye.
Moore, aye. Constantine,
Nay.
Constantine, nay. Turner, Turner. I can come back to Turner. Watanabe,
Aye.
Watanabe, aye. Jones,
Aye.
Jones, aye. Bybee,
No.
Bybee, nay. Fliger,
Yes.
Fliger, aye. Syok,
No.
Syok, nay. Blankley,
No.
Blankley, nay. Abakoga,
No.
Abakoga, nay. Klein,
Yes.
Klein, aye. Montano,
No.
Montano, nay. And is Turner with us?
Yes. Oh, no. My answer is no. Yes, I'm with you. My answer is no.
Thank you. And we have 7 ayes and 7 nays.
Okay, so we have no motion.
That's act of God.
Can I have an alternate motion right now, please?
Chair, I move the original motion of dissolving by December 31st.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, and I believe we've talked at that ad nauseum, so I'll call the question. And so if we can, Auden? Auden, oh, thank you.
And the seconder was?
Marie Blankley.
Great, thank you. Okay, Turner?
Yes.
Turner, aye. Jones?
Nay.
Jones, nay. Zhao?
I'm gonna vote yes.
Zhao, aye. Blankley?
Yes.
Blankley, aye. Fliger? Fliger?
No.
Fliger, nay. Montano?
Yes.
Montano, aye. Bybee?
Aye.
Bybee, aye. Abakoga?
Aye.
Abakoga, aye. Sayok?
Aye.
Sayok, aye. Klein?
Nay.
Klein, nay. Moore?
No.
Moore, nay. Constantine?
Nay.
Constantine,
Wait.
nay.
That is correct.
You're the maker of the motion.
Yeah, that's what.
Okay.
What?
No. You're right. You're absolutely right. I was getting caught up because guess who walked in the room? Say hi.
Oh.
Hi, Emma.
Hi. Sorry. Hold on.
I do that.
Thank you, Marie. Say hi.
Is that a mask?
It's their astronaut hat.
Okay, cool.
All right.
Can we continue?
Okay, Dubois. Oh. Dubois.
Sorry, no.
Dubois, nay. Watanabe.
No.
Watanabe, nay. And so we have 8 ayes and 6 nays. And so the majority votes aye and the motion carries.
And so at this point, Gary, we still don't have details on what this actually means, and we're going to be working with our bylaws as well as the roundtable bylaws to determine the process. Is that correct?
Yes, I'll take that to be direction to the executive director and myself to determine a process, and we will keep the board apprised.
Okay. And so, colleagues, it's 9:34. It's been a late night. Before we adjourn, though, we will take public comment. This is on items that are not on the agenda, and all attendees who'd like to speak have 3 minutes. Vice Mayor Hendricks, is this on a verbal communication?
As I
He's muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I had my hand up. I was trying to, be able to answer some of the questions that had come up. You guys already did what you wanted to do. And all I'll say is I'm happy to have a beer with anybody and really explain the reality of what occurred.
Okay, thank you. And anyone else who'd like to speak? Okay, seeing no other speakers, we'll close public testimony. And that is all that we have. Oh, actually, no, we have 2 quick updates. An update from City Managers Association from the manager's perspective.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. The city managers met yesterday to continue its discussion of COVID-19. We got an update on vaccine and testing mandates. We also got an update on the reopening of individual city halls by the various communities. And finally, we discussed police reform as well as our diversity, equity, inclusion efforts. So there's quite a bit of activity happening in our county by the individual jurisdictions on those topics. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Laurel. And Andy, an executive director update?
Yes, just had a notice that that I will send you from the county. It's Dementia Friends USA is having a global awareness day, and I will send that information to you. But the awareness day is September 21st. Becoming a dementia friend is a simple action that takes less than 10 minutes, but contributes to a dementia-friendly community. We are requesting each of you print out a certificate and share on social media a photo of you with a certificate on September 21st for World Alzheimer Awareness Day. So I will send that information to you. Also wanted to let you know that tomorrow at 1 o'clock, there is a tour with Mountain View with their Life Moves project, which is a Project Home Key project. There still is room if anyone is interested in attending. If you are, you'll want to send Auden a message ASAP because there's just a few seats, a few availability left, and Auden can forward the information that we have received for that tour tomorrow at 1. And we appreciate Mountain View for inviting us, and it's just an incredible project. So,
I'm
Margaret.
sorry if I can interject. We just got notice that there were a couple of the residents yesterday tested positive for COVID. As of 5 o'clock, the plan was to continue the tour anyway. I personally have some concerns about that because I don't know if other residents were, infected by these two. So I think we're still been working that out. So you may hear differently tomorrow morning. But, and we can reschedule if we do decide to postpone.
Interested in attending, you did receive that information was shared already so that individuals could make their own choice. And they said they would give us an update. So.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we do have joys and challenges, but considering it's 9:38, I'm going to go ahead and skip that portion and adjourn tonight's meeting. And thank you all for your patience. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good job.
Bye.
Right.
Everyone.